My people, I have got one heck of an interview for you today. I'm going to have a conversation with an incredible human from the UK. His name is Abul, and he is an award-winning wedding photographer who has made quite the name for himself in the industry and his exceptional skills. He is like exquisite. It's wild. He is an absolute like lover of the arts, and all of his images just have this graceful emotion, connection, and his attention to detail is next level. Um yeah, it's gorgeous. Look him up, abul.co. I will link his website in the show notes. If you just want some gorgeous art to stare at for a few hours, go to his website. So, the amazing thing about him, and I'm hoping that he will get into this, he has an incredible dedication to his craft and his how he has developed his passion for storytelling into a very successful career as one of the most sought after wedding photographers in the industry. He inspires us, he captivates us. He's building this legacy that is going to ensure that we will forever remember him. He has, of course, won dozens of awards for his work, including Rising Star nominee by Rangefinder. That's a big one. He was Destination Wedding Photographer of the Year by Lux Life this year in 2023, and he gets commissioned by like Harper's Bazaar and Esquire magazine, and just for his editorial work as well. So, but that's not even why I'm excited that he's here. Like, he's just a wonderful human, and I cannot wait to share him with you. If you haven't heard of him, this will brighten your day. If his art doesn't do it, his voice will. So here he is, Abul.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good.
Look at us
Yeah,
all
I'm
decked out
just
in white.
sorry, lovely.
I said, look at us all decked out in white.
I know, right? Yeah, I was totally picking up from your energy. Uh,
Clearly. Are you in
how
the
have you
UK
been?
right now? I've been really good. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been surprisingly good. Normally, at this point in the season, I'm pretty exhausted, but I
Mm.
I said no so I could say yes to other things.
Oh, I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. I love how you take control of what's most important to you, first and foremost.
Well, it hasn't always been like this, my friend.
Mm.
And maybe we'll talk a little bit about that today.
Yes, we will. Well, you're wiser for it. And yeah, we should talk about that today too.
Yeah. Yeah, let's
I'm just going
talk.
to move my laptop over here
Sounds good.
because this is all scruffy over the side. So give me one sec.
Please provide me a nicer viewing backdrop.
I think you deserve nothing less, my dear.
Thank you.
Nothing less. You're like, yeah, that's terrible, Abel. Give me something nicer. Just yeah,
Is that
that
a
doesn't work for
latte
me.
back there or a cappuccino? What's happening?
Oh, that was dinner. That
Oh,
was noodles.
what did you have for dinner?
I made chicken stir fry and noodles. Yeah,
Delicious.
yeah, it was good.
Delicious.
Yeah, thank you. Made it for me and my mum. She
Oh,
enjoyed it, and we're both still alive, so it can't have been that bad. Mhm.
do you enjoy cooking?
I love cooking. Yeah,
Yeah.
cooking for me is like so therapeutic.
Yeah.
It's just like I forget about everything else, and I'm just, you know, just making
So good.
something and just seeing how it goes and what it's going to turn into.
Yeah,
Mm.
I understand that, but I don't feel it when I'm cooking.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I have I was a dietitian for a long time. And so I
Ah,
look at food very like scientifically.
as fuel instead of
Yeah.
pleasure, right?
Yeah, like
Okay.
okay, this is this, that's that. And I also have like a history
Mm.
of an eating disorder, so that would definitely disrupted the pleasure side of stuff
Mm.
for a long time.
Hmm. That makes
Um,
sense.
yeah, yeah. And so now it's really nice that my husband does almost all the cooking because when I make it, it's like, okay, there's this much protein here and there's this much carbs here and there's this much fat and we need this type of fat. Like my
I
brain is very like
see.
very computery about it or like mathy. Yeah.
Very intentional, right? About nutrition first and then
Yeah, which feels gross. Like it feels really constraining, but I
mm.
notice that those feelings are still there, which is
Oh,
interesting.
really?
Yeah. Yeah. I wish I'm working on them not to be, but it's an incredibly long process.
I get that. No, I
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, my I mean, just to share with you, my I grew up in a single parent family. My mum, um, my mum struggled with um, depression growing up. You know, single parent mum.
Hmm.
My dad was always kind of in the background. Um, he kind of kept her waiting for many, many years. That
Mm.
really kind of took a toll on her.
Yeah.
So my mum was not the very best at communicating. You know, she came from Morocco in the 70s to work for a hospital. And long story short, the point I'm coming to is um, she's not the greatest communicator,
Hmm.
but when she would be in a place where she knew she stepped maybe a bit too far past the line, instead of apologizing, she would make me like my favorite dish. And I would know deep
Oh,
down that it was like her way of, you know, apologizing or showing affection.
right. Right.
She was thinking about me, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. That's beautiful that you had that bit of intuition that you would know that because not everybody can read love languages.
Right. Hmm. Yeah. No, I get that.
Hmm.
I get that. Yeah. It's definitely something that, um, something that I think probably comes like the intuition I really feel has come out of this necessity and survival instinct from young. I was speaking to another photographer just a couple of weeks ago, and her journey was pretty similar to mine. And she's also like very intuitive, very good at being able to read people. And it just kind of clicked because she said something to me that kind of reminded me a bit of my childhood, where she'd have to constantly be aware of like her mum's mood, you know,
Mm.
and by like how she's walking down the steps
Yeah.
or like how she's doing. And that was like just the greatest example as to, you know, how aware a child can be of someone's energy and then
For
how
sure.
intuitive they are that they carry on to reading other people. But honestly, like Tony Robbins says, um, you know, I love my mum and I've got so much to be grateful for um,
Absolutely.
to her. And, you know, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be as connected to my clients and to people around me as I am now.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. It's interesting how those things um evolve as we grow, right? If you're willing to let them evolve, if you're willing to work on them slowly.
yes. Yeah. What does he say? He says something so eloquently. He says, if you're going to blame, then you have to blame intelligently, not just for the bad things, but also for the good things that have come out of those difficult
Mm.
relationships. Like, you know,
Yeah.
by being loved in a way that no, by not receiving the love from a parent, you know how you don't want to be a parent to your children. You know how
Mm.
you do want to love better to your children, how you want to be a better parent because they've taught you. So that actually has its own positives,
Right.
from those experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very easy to overlook that.
Blaming intelligently, he says.
Hmm.
I
I'm
love.
writing this down, my friend. Oh,
Mm.
oh, Tony Robbins. How long have you been paying attention to him?
Oh boy. So I'm 45 now. When I turned 30, I went on this spiritual path where I just wanted to delve deeper into myself, into my family and my family tree, and
Hmm.
um, became super spiritual. And I think it was somewhere along that journey, found Tony Robbins, and
Hmm.
yeah, I've been a big fan of his for a while now.
Hmm. Was that one
Mm.
of your shifts? How you decided to go on that journey?
You know, the biggest trigger for my shifts, I think, was reading the book The Alchemist. I think that
Ah,
was like literally my mind expanding into like a universe beyond what I can see like around me. That right there was one of the greatest adventures in my life,
how
for
so?
sure.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Hmm. Are we starting, by the way?
Oh
Is
yeah,
this
this is all going to be in the podcast. Is that okay?
absolutely
You're already on. You've been on.
okay? Let's do it. That's great.
Let's do it. Let's jump
Um,
in.
I love how you've just kept this raw and natural. Oh, by the way, we started like 5 minutes ago. Yeah,
By the way.
um, so I guess I always felt that there was, a larger consciousness, but I never really, spent much time processing that, as a young kid growing up or teenager or even in my 20s.
Hmm.
But when I read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho,
Hmm.
there was something about that that really began to help me comprehend a universe beyond my comprehension, and just gave me the inkling that things happen for a reason, you
Hmm.
know, and yeah, it just absolutely blew my mind.
Hmm. I remember reading it in my like early 20s
Mm,
and almost in disbelief at how the impact that it had on my brain, similar to what you're saying, like
mm,
just like
mm,
whoa, but all of it making sense.
mm,
Even though it was total like I couldn't wrap my head around it, but it made perfect sense.
mm,
Um,
mm.
and
So
it's
you connected to it?
I really connected to it, and then I did a bunch of things to totally bury that because
Mm,
connection was really dangerous for me. Like connecting
mm,
to my true feelings was at that point in my life wasn't safe.
mm,
And but multiple
mm,
people in the past kind of 3 or 4 months have mentioned The Alchemist.
mm.
So I'm sure it's going to land on my door very soon again, and I'll read it again. And I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah.
Oh, good, good, good. You'll have to let me know when you get it if you feel just as pulled as you did the first time.
Hmm.
Um, it left such a huge mark on my life when I read it.
Hmm.
I think I read at that point every book available by Paulo Coelho,
Hmm.
but I've never gone back to reread that because I didn't want to
Oh,
give it anything less than the feeling it gave me when I first read it.
of
Like that's
course.
how I want to remember the book, like up there. And that's how I will always cherish the book. And I just want to leave it on the shelf.
Yeah.
Just let it be its reminder to me every time I see it, but just carry that feeling with me, and respect the journey it started me on.
That is a really, I'm drawing a blank as to what
Mm,
sort of word to put there, but insightful is coming up, beautiful.
mm,
Because we feel this calling to like go back so that we can feel that feeling again for whatever reason, whether it's nostalgia or like curiosity or whatever it might be. Um, but respecting the role that it played with your frame of mind at that time of your life and being at peace with just leaving it there is very I that's very cool. I'm one who's like, okay, I wonder if it still feels like that. Hmm.
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm grateful you're so kind about that and my journey with it. Have you had any books that has made you feel a certain way, much like my journey with The Alchemist? Like you mentioned that The Alchemist was pretty special to you too,
Yeah.
but have you had any other books that have really drawn you in and maybe expanded your consciousness as much as The Alchemist have did with me?
Yes. There's a book by Robin Kimmerer. and it's called Braiding Sweetgrass.
I'm gonna write this down.
Yeah, and it's not it is it's a woman's story
Mhm.
discovering how her ancestry and heritage and science and art and her connection to the land and her connection to herself, how they have all evolved together and how they all belong together. And it illuminated a feeling that I had of how much we compartmentalize everything in our society and in our cultures.
Mm,
And her journey was figuring out, because she has indigenous ancestry, but she was raised in a white home. She felt like
mm,
she was an artist, but she had to figure it out scientifically why she was so drawn to beauty. And she had this innate knowing that the things that she thought were beautiful, that there was a traditional reason, like from an indigenous perspective,
mm,
but also she had this desire to explain it scientifically. So it was this beautiful like dovetailing of what science, capitalism like tend to really want us to separate,
mm,
or maybe,
mm,
yeah, how we kind of say like man is above everything else, and like a
mm,
tree is a tree and it's not related to any of the other trees, and
mm,
it's survival of the fittest, and it's not. It really isn't. It's this beautiful synergy of all of these things working together, and science and
mm.
art are also like that. So it was like I was crying through most of it. It's
Um,
super beautiful. Yeah, all of her stories
I
are
love that.
just gorgeous. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Hmm.
You know, it's bizarre because, I tell you how much I've loved The Alchemist, and, you know, this book sounds amazing that you're telling me about. And, you know, The Alchemist was such a pivotal point in my life
Hmm.
and my journey, spiritually, physically. But it's funny that since reading these books by Paulo Coelho,
Hmm.
I've been on such a journey to pursue knowledge, you know,
Hmm.
whether it's to do with my craft or whether it's to do with relationships or to do with life or self-healing, that I actually don't read fictional books anymore,
No,
which
life is
is
too short for fiction.
right. I know. So the last series of books, of fictional books that I ever read was by Paulo Coelho, because
Yeah.
since then I've been like, um, you know, life is too short. I really am on this journey to, better myself a little bit every day.
Hmm.
Now, if I look at my collection of books or audio books or the books on my shelf, they're all spirituality or self-healing or photography or art, or
Hmm.
it's all in the pursuit of knowledge now.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. I've totally in at the end of 2021,
Mm,
I had this realization.
hmm.
It just sort of like came and spoke in my ear. I was having coffee one
Oh,
morning and it was like, "Hey Bobby, what if the way you see the world isn't the way it is?" And then it like walked away. And I'm like,
wow.
"What?"
Mic drop.
Like, no kidding. But it just made me question
Mm,
everything that has been like all of my thoughts and
mm,
biases and um my reactions and what I believe is right and wrong, like all of these things. Since then I've just, every time something kind of comes up, I'm like, okay,
mm,
what does that mean?
mm,
And then I want to find out about it. So if I feel resistance against something, then I'm
mm.
like, okay, that's what I need to learn.
Right, right.
Yeah, and especially around spirituality and like energy,
Mm,
levels of energy, and like how the things that aren't things that aren't explainable in the current language that we have
mm,
um
mm.
very curious about all of that stuff now.
or to the information we have as a society today,
Correct.
which may be far progressed to what we knew 100 years ago, but
Mhm.
it's we know it's going to fall far short to what we're going to know in like 50 years, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I find that all fascinating.
I agree.
Mm,
And just because we can't necessarily explain it doesn't mean it doesn't exist,
absolutely.
which
Yeah.
is something I think we kind of default to, right? You're like, well, can't prove it, therefore it doesn't exist, which is
Mm.
the most short-sighted response that we could possibly have.
Ignorance is bliss. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm.
Hmm. So tell
Boy, we
me,
started deep. Mm.
there's nowhere else to start, my friend. To be honest, though, I was Googling you just before
Oh, really?
our little chat.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't necessarily do
Mm,
this for all my guests,
mm,
but I was actually looking for your website
mm,
and I hadn't gone to the email. It was in the email, but I just thought like I could write Abul Shaw and you would come up. And quite a few things came up, and your website didn't.
oh, interesting.
Just so you
Okay.
know.
Thank you.
Um, but an interview came up from a podcast a few years ago,
Mm,
and you described a period of your life where you
mm,
were living at the YMCA.
mm, mm.
And I was wondering if that was one of the things that you had planned to talk a little bit about today, or if there was something else. I don't like necessarily to direct these conversations because I want people to just share what they feel like sharing, but that definitely sparked a big piece of curiosity for me. And
Mm.
yeah.
Well, I'm very grateful for your thoughtfulness and your kindness and your gentle approach to broaching the subject. I'm an open book, so you can ask me anything, and I'd be happy to answer.
Mhm.
The one thing that's most important to me in my life, especially now more than any time, is honesty, and that starts with honesty with myself, because one of the things I've learned some years ago is this beautiful thing that I heard. It's a Sufi quote
Mhm.
from the world of Sufism, and they say that of all the veils we work through in life, whether it's the veil of like arrogance or selfishness, the last, the most difficult veil there is to see, the very last veil is the veil of the ego.
Mm,
Because the ego will fool you into thinking it's not there. The ego will
yeah.
fool you into thinking it's like everybody else. So I'm always trying to find ways to humble myself and remind myself that um, I'm I have more flaws than most people, um, but at the same time, my consciousness about my potentials growing a little every day.
Mhm.
So I'd be happy to answer and share my story.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess I'll just jump right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. No
Okay.
pressure.
We're listening.
um, so I found myself at this crossroads in life where I really wanted to know what it is I wanted to do with my life. And I was at this pivotal point where I realized instinctively that I wanted to pursue photography. When I was thinking about all the things I love in life, whether it's music or, cooking or whatever it is, technology, I the thing that came to the top of my head all the time was photography. And it's something that has really helped mold me as a person, the years before that I've, kind of stepped into, looking through my viewfinder and taking photos and um, photographing people and weddings. So I committed to pursuing my path of becoming a wedding photographer.
Mhm.
Now, I I had just moved back from Canada back to the UK, and I decided that I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to hold the fort. I'm going to go through my savings, and I'm going to eat, sleep, and breathe photography.
Mhm.
I I had never known what 100% of my energy looks like, and
Mm,
how often do we really know what 100% of our energy looks like? Bobby, how have you ever given 100% to something in your life and
Oh,
committed
I might start
100%?
crying actually. If you yeah, I did for like 18 months of my life.
Mm,
Hmm.
mm.
Yeah, I'll
Oh,
share after you tell your story. Yeah.
oh, I'm going to come back to that. That's good. Um, because I know most of the people around us, friends and family, they've never experienced that, and I don't even know if I've given like 80% of my energy into one particular thing that I dreamed of aspiring.
Mhm.
So I knew photography was it for me. I wanted to see what my 100% looked like. So I decided to commit to that and just pursue the art of photography,
Mhm.
particularly wedding photography. So for a year, I was eating, sleeping, breathing photography, um, self-taught. So I'd be going through like YouTube videos, I'd be reading books. I think I signed up for like an online course. I would be out every single day with my camera, one lens. It was a Nikon D800,
Oh, nice.
a fantastic camera at the time.
Yeah.
And I think I had like the 50 mm lens as well.
Uh-huh.
And I would just be out there every day, just photographing, trying to build a business. I found this business workshop to help new business startups like mine. So I learned how to build a website. I learned about cash flow forecasting and all the business side of things that I had no idea about.
Mhm.
But by the end of the first year, I realized that I had pretty much burnt through all my savings. And I reached this point where I realized I'm not going to be able to afford my rent. And I guess I found myself at another crossroads.
Mhm.
And I really asked myself, you know, what am I going to do? So I thought about the options ahead of me. Should I get a job and put photography on the side and come back to it, once I'm kind of sustaining myself? Should I get a part-time job and bring photography down to part-time? Should I, um, I was just trying to work out how I could balance life and generating income with photography. And then I heard this quote by our friend, Tony Robbins,
Mhm.
and it was so powerful that it just hit me like a ton of bricks.
Mhm.
He says, if you want to take the island, you have to be prepared to burn the boats.
Mhm.
And what he means by that is if you have a goal, if you have that one single goal that you want bad enough, like you want it so passionately, then you have to be prepared to burn the boats. And by burning the boats, he means removing the temptation to go back to safety,
Yes.
by completely removing that safety net and just forcing yourself to stay on the island and just finding a way to survive because you're literally moving forward with no other option but being there.
Yeah.
So that I've got goosebumps now just thinking about
Yeah.
this. Um, I decided to burn the boats
Mhm.
and I walked um, to the YMCA, which is like a hostel here um, in the town centre. And I introduced myself and I said, my name's Abul. I declared myself as homeless,
Mhm.
which I tell you, there's nothing more humbling than that, in all
Wow.
honesty.
Yeah.
I explained my situation and I remained there until I managed to come out 8 months later with a sustainable business, a self sustaining business. And, I still have friends who are still upset with me about that. The fact that I didn't call on them for help or,
Mhm.
go to family. But again, when I was explaining my rationale for that decision, it was all about that all important 100% because I know if I was sofa surfing at friends or, maybe moving into a spare room at a friend's house or family's house, I know that I'd have to share some of my attention, some of my time,
Absolutely.
some of that 100%, you know, to, to them, to the house, to be kind and grateful for, allowing me into their space. But it was really important for me just to make sure I'm completely focusing, like laser focusing,
Mhm.
nothing but 100% attention onto photography with absolutely no distractions. and no responsibilities to be formal to anybody or social responsibilities, but just purely focus
Mhm.
on on photography.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's exactly what I did.
Wow. Did you have, no, what fears did you have? Or did you? I'm assuming there
Uh,
would have been some fears, but then you did something about them.
hmm, great question. You mean going in and declaring myself as homeless, or being in that situation, or
Burning the boat.
oh boy, yeah. So I think there's going to be the natural fear, of are you going to make it? Are people going to look down at you? What are people going to think about you? There are all these a whole rainbow spectrum of fears and thoughts.
Mhm.
And as someone who, can tend to be a bit of an overthinker and an overplanner, I was definitely conscious of each and every one of those.
Mhm.
But after a few days, when I decided I'm going to do this, I had to make this agreement or this contract with myself that those people who truly care about me and my goal and my pursuit of my goal, they will understand what I'm doing.
Right.
And if I really want to quieten the voices in my head, then burning the boats and succeeding is going to be the answer for myself and for those thoughts.
Right.
So I established a work ethic when I was there that is still very prevalent now in my life. Um, I I established this work ethic where I would just be again eating, sleeping, breathing photography and just working on the craft every single day. If it wasn't to do with photography, I didn't want to know. So there I am in this little hostel with just a bed and a desk, and I have a single camera, probably like a couple of lenses at this point now, and a computer.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was there that I just worked my bum off until, you know, I created a sustainable business.
Mhm. Now there are a million questions
Mm,
that I could be
I'm
asking you.
I'm an open book.
One of them is like,
Mm,
we've got the start, you walking in, declaring homelessness,
mm,
walking out 8 months later, and you had
mm,
this work ethic.
mm,
But
mm,
that's a long period of time.
mm,
And I imagine there would have been lots of mental struggles to
mm,
maintain that work ethic, right?
mm.
So, what else did you develop during that time so that you could stay there in that space?
I don't think there was one single thing I had to maintain. I mean, let me just explain the living situation while I was there.
Sure.
Let me just start with this, which will help you kind of understand the focus. So, in this building, there were like 12 floors.
Hmm.
At the time, it was the tallest building in the town I live in,
Hmm.
and I think I was on. I remember the room I was on 1017, so I was on the 10th floor, room 17, and the desk was at this window we can literally see from um, all across Watford to like neighboring towns. Um, and it was just, I would just kind of meditate there at the window every day, just looking out at the views and just thinking to myself of, the goals I have, and reminding myself of, my objective. But in the same building, you have a floor for like just vulnerable women who are like victims of abuse. Um, you have people who are, drug users, alcoholics. You have people who are just, just unlucky with life and just reach this point where they just found themselves in the situation. So you have this complete spectrum of people in there, um, and some, very unsavory people. And it was really important for me not to be distracted, not to um, do anything else but just be at the desk and work as much as I can. And if I'm not at the desk, I'm either eating or I'm shooting with my camera. And as someone like me who has worked formerly as a Samaritan or as a counselor, there was the big temptation to to help people as much as I
Mm,
could. And I did. And I ended up taking some photos for the YMCA and contributing to some of their publications there as well.
mm,
So it was a really great practice for me to really hone in my focus, not be distracted, and
mhm,
just walk the path
mhm.
towards the one single goal, and
Mhm.
just remind myself, am I giving 100% today?
Right.
If I'm not, then I'm gonna see if I can just realign myself
Mhm.
at the end of the day or by tomorrow. Make sure I'm giving them 100%.
Did you have a timeline?
I didn't. No, I didn't. It's funny because I had no idea how long I was going to be there for. I mean, I had hoped I was going to be there for like a couple of months, but I found myself there for 8 months in total.
Mhm.
But every time I, go looking for um, photography related job opportunities, I would accept nothing less. And I was, very clear about that when I was looking for work. Um, while trying to generate an income. And I had a few jobs here and there coming in. But one of the jobs I picked up while I was in that position was nightclub photography.
Mm.
So I'd photograph nightclubs, and every time I'd pick up my camera, every opportunity I'd have to click that shutter, I'm literally practicing um, my creativity. I'm trialing and erroring, ways to photograph things, to light things. Because let me remind you, like when you're a nightclub photographer, a lot of these clubs are very dark, very dingy. There's virtually no lighting.
Mhm.
So I always looked at every night as a challenge to be able to light my subject in the best way possible, try and story tell, what I'm seeing in front of me, and used
Mhm.
every opportunity to practice the craft of storytelling and
Mhm.
wedding photography, that I reinvest into wedding photography
Mhm.
after. And I'd never done this before. When I started, I was pretty bad at it, if I'm honest. My
Mhm.
lighting was, pretty bad. And, I was still kind of getting the grips as someone who isn't much of a club or a night, you know, of a
Yeah.
nighttime, clubbing person. I kind of really jumped in the deep end there. But
Yeah.
within 3-4 months, I think I was the most requested photographer
Uh-huh.
for the company. I started. I got requests specifically for me to photograph like food menus for like restaurants, to
Mhm.
do like product shoots for some of the bars when they'd seen my work.
Mhm.
I became resident to a couple of venues as well. And then from there, I made other contacts, and I started from there, starting to shoot for publications and events for publications
Mhm.
until I ended up finding myself shooting for like Harper's Bazaar and Esquire magazine, some of their biggest events of the year.
Mhm.
And there I am shooting these A-list celebrities, like Jeremy Renner or Ron Howard, and
Mhm.
um, here I am, this homeless photographer,
Mhm.
photographing the most lavish, luxurious events with the most incredible, like A-list celebrities, and they have no idea about my situation. And I'm adamant I'm not going to mention this to anybody at all because I don't want them to judge me and my situation. I only wanted them to judge me on my work and the quality of my work.
Right.
And yeah, so, you know, there I am in this hostel, homeless photographer, but photographing some incredible events, by the time I'm coming out, which was incredible.
Mhm. It just like it seems like so the question that's coming from me is
Mm,
like, but how? Like, how did you go? Like what were the seconds where you went from like there's something more here, Abul. I think
mm,
there's something about you that made it that you could get from event publications to Harper's Bazaar. And I wonder if it was because of your 1017, because you were so solely focused, you
mm,
were that it opened some sort of portal that took you from not even knowing how to use off-camera flash or even on-camera flash probably to get you into publications in less than 8 months?
You know, I've often wondered about this. I've often wondered, what has the biggest return of investment, you know, um, back to myself, my business.
Mm-hmm.
When I look at the time I've spent and the time I've invested,
Mm-hmm.
to different areas of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Once I knew this was for me, and I remember the moment that clicked. I remember the moment where I let me talk you through this moment actually.
Okay. Yes,
So
please.
it's probably been a few months now, maybe 3-4 months. I'm at this hostel and I'm just picking up just little bits of work and making a little bit of income, but it's not enough to sustain myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then I received this phone call from I received this phone call from someone who introduced themselves from the Master Photographers Association. And he said, hey, is this Abul? And I said, yes. And he said, hey, this is so and so from the Master Photographers Association. He says, I want to congratulate you. You've made it through to the finals for the International Wedding Album of the Year competition. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. I stopped and I said,
Excuse me.
excuse me, what? And he laughed. I remember him laughing on the phone and he said, yeah. He said, you've made it through to the finals. That's the top 5 for the International Wedding Album of the Year competition. And then he said, you should be really proud because you've beat some really big photographers. Now, at the time when this album was submitted to this competition, the album company actually submitted it for me. I had made my
Oh.
first ever wedding album, first ever, and the wedding album company liked it so much that they said, no, we really like this. We'd like to submit it to this competition. And I
Mm-hmm.
presumed that they would just give me lip service because they want me to purchase more of their albums.
Right.
And they're incredible. It's Graphy Studio who
Mm-hmm.
make some of my favorite albums in the world, hands down. Um, so I thought they're just giving me lip service because they want me to buy more albums from them. So I said, oh, that's very nice of you. Thank you. They said, no, we can enter it into the competition. And I said, you can do whatever you like. It's no problem. I had totally forgot about it, completely forgot about it.
Yeah.
So there I am, walking back to my hostel. I have a cheese and tomato sandwich in my hand and the phone in my other. And
Yeah.
I remember, I'm going to try not to get emotional thinking about this. I remember stopping and I remember just breaking down into tears in the middle of this public high street with
Mm-hmm.
this cheese and tomato sandwich in one hand and phone in the other. And I just started thanking the universe and God for giving me the sign that I'm on the right path.
Right.
I just stood there and I just said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I just knew from that moment on that I am on the right path and that this is what I'm going to be doing. So that was the first time I had really got this clarity that, yeah, Abel, you keep going, son, because
Yeah.
you're on your way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. Because
Thank you so
sometimes
much.
we need that little bit of encouragement, right? And I mean that
Mm,
was obviously a big piece of encouragement, but like nonetheless,
mm,
when we dive headfirst into something, you can be swimming around for a long time before you have any sort of response that what you're doing is what you should be doing, right? Or that
right.
you have made the right decision for your life and survival and
Yeah.
all that, right?
Yeah.
Do you think um like would you recommend a 1017 period to
Mm.
anybody?
Mm. It's a little extreme. It's a little dramatic. Um, and I thought about if I go back, would I do it again?
Hmm.
And I absolutely would.
Yeah.
I I wouldn't have changed anything about my journey here. The only thing I wished I would have done is maybe start this career sooner
Mm,
and stop
yeah.
letting fear hold me back that I can't make an income from this.
Hmm.
But I mean, you said that was beautiful, and that moment, and I'm so grateful that you think so. But do you know what's even more beautiful than that? Is that if I rewind back and tell you about the wedding that the album belongs to, that the album
Yeah, we're
originated
missing
from.
a very important piece here.
Let me tell you about this wedding. So this wedding, one of my very close friends, her name was Kerry. She called me and she said, "Hey, one of my really good friends who's a hairdresser is getting married. It's a very simple wedding, but they just can't afford a wedding photographer. I was wondering if you'd be able to help." And I haven't really shared this story with many people, but I I thought to myself, here I am with this opportunity to help somebody, you know, and as someone who recognizes that sometimes we all need help,
Hmm.
I I said to her, you know what, I'll photograph the wedding. And when she asked me how much, I said to her, why don't you just tell them it's a gift from you? Don't tell them, of our arrangement. This is going to be my gift to you, and then you can gift me to them. And I did that because I didn't want them to think I was a free photographer and then to devalue me or to see me differently, on the wedding day.
Hmm.
So she understood that. And the bride and groom, Haley and Dean, their names were, I still remember them. They were super, super excited. So I did this wedding for free. And I did
Hmm.
this wedding for free because number one, I wanted to help. And number two, by helping them, I'm helping myself as well,
Yeah.
getting the images for myself. So I photographed this wedding. It was a fantastic wedding. I had a wonderful time. The couple were amazing. The whole family was amazing, and it was just a perfect day. It was a very very modest wedding. It was just um, a civil ceremony, and I don't know what you call it in the States, but like a town hall wedding. Is that
I'm
what you
not in the
call?
States either. I'm in Canada, so
Oh yes, I'm
I don't
sorry.
know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's like a
it's like a
civil
registry office
ceremony, I
wedding.
guess.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
something.
Yeah. So, everything's just very humble and very modest, but just the two just absolutely wonderful people. So going into every wedding, I established one of my work ethics is to treat every opportunity to photograph, every shoot, I'll treat it as if it's my last, right?
Yeah.
So I treat this wedding as if it's my last wedding to guarantee myself I'm going to give nothing short of 100% again. The wedding did so well that when I shared the images, the bride and groom absolutely loved the images, which was the most important thing. But I won some awards for the wedding.
Mhm.
Um, the wedding was then picked up and featured by Nikon, and I was then featured by Nikon as like a Nikon wedding storyteller. Um, and then to go on from that wedding um, is the wedding I made the album from, which went through to make the International Wedding Album of the Year.
Oh,
So if you
wow.
think about it, this one task of kindness, this one opportunity to help somebody has still been paying me back even
Hmm.
now. So when photographers or people say to me, never do free work,
Hmm.
I don't argue with them, but I know that every time I've given something of myself to somebody, I've always received more back. And
Hmm.
I'm not afraid of, doing free tasks from time to time. I mean, I know my worth, I know my
Mhm.
value, and how much I charge now.
Mhm.
But when I see an opportunity to do something good for somebody,
Mhm.
um, I just remind myself of Haley and Dean and just exactly what a
Mhm.
blessing they've been for me in my life.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really easy to get caught up in black and whites in terms of like never doing something or
Mm,
expecting like trying to shut that off of expecting something back when you're being kind or when you're offering something or
mm,
we mentioned ego earlier in the call. A lot of times our
mm.
ego will get into there and tell us what we should and shouldn't be doing. But I wonder that the act of kindness that you felt in that moment, um, was there something unique about that? Like, did you have like a stirring? Like, was there something in your, like you felt an instinctual response or what, was it something more logical? Because you couldn't have known any of this, but like,
No, no, I don't. One thing I tell people now, and in fact, I just mentioned this a few days ago, is when I reach a point where I'm unsure what to do, or unsure how to proceed, I always come back and ask myself this one question, and that's what's the right thing to do?
Hmm.
And I always find that when I ask myself that question, like the answer just becomes clear instantly.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
right thing to do is never the easiest thing to do, though. I've always found that the right thing to do is always the more difficult of the options ahead of you, but it's always the most rewarding. So when the question came to me, instead of thinking about logistics and what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it, I just thought to myself of two people that just needed, a little TLC, and I jumped at the opportunity. And when I thought to myself, what's the right thing to do? What would I want if I was in that position? And yeah, it's still paying its way forward for me even now.
Hmm.
Mm,
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
mm. Thank you for listening.
When I asked you to come on to the podcast,
Mm,
you had sent 3 words that kind of drive your, I guess it's your life philosophy or how you work or um, how you move through the world. I like saying that phrase, how we move through the world. I think that
mm,
is kind of a beautiful, like visual, but also it has some grace to it that we forget to that we do sort of inherently have if we look for or if we're true to our values.
mm,
And one of the things that you had mentioned, you had said gratitude was
mm.
big, and you had said, I'm just pulling it up right here. You had
Authenticity.
said authenticity,
Mm,
and personal growth.
mm,
And what you've just described is all 3
mm,
of those, right?
mm. I didn't see the connection, but yeah, I can see that now. Thank you, Bobby.
Yeah, I think it's when things are truly, excuse me,
Mm,
when things are truly these big shifts in our lives, they
mm,
often come down to periods where all of those, like our main values, are in alignment. And this is something that I always talk about with my students, is
mm,
really digging in with them to find out what their values are. Like
mm,
what is important to you? What has created you as a human being? And that's your truth. That's your voice. That's your brand. It's all of that. And when you can create a life where those 3 or 5 or whatever, however many like main values uh are your like North Star, or they're
mm,
your magnetic north,
mm,
then
mm,
things come together, right? It
mm.
works. It works out for you because you're being true to your your raison
The authentic
d'etre.
self.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Um, yeah, what else, what other moments did you have in your life where you're like, okay, this is the way I have to go?
Yeah. Good question. The thing that probably comes to the top of my head right now is probably um, on the topic of authenticity. And I remember, I remember when I was in Canada. I remember when I started operating under a business name. I remember sitting there thinking, how can I attract as many people as possible and be as appealing as I can to the widest audience possible and
Yes,
get
the
as many
safest,
people as I can.
largest
Right.
net.
Right. Yeah. Which we're wiser now, but
Yes.
at the time, I thought to myself, well, I don't want to use my name. Um, I, I guess with a Middle Eastern name, I know I'd probably get stereotyped. I know people would probably skip the step over me, and look at another photographer, either side of me. So I thought, well, if I can just get them to look at my work first,
Hmm.
and then they like my work, then they're gonna like me, right? So
Yeah.
I created the name Gracious Photography,
Hmm.
because I thought it was, very much me.
Mhm,
Um, it kind of, described a little of my energy and my philosophy.
mhm.
And as well as that, without really mentioning me by name, I get people to see my work. And then once
Right.
they're there, hopefully they'd be hooked in, right? And then I can kind
Mhm,
of reel. But then I joined this during COVID, I think September 2020. I invested probably the largest investment I've ever made into myself. I joined the Abundance Plan, which is like a education mentorship group with Katie Mary.
mhm,
And she did this website review for me and she gave me some wonderful feedback. And she said to me, you should really work under your name, and explained that when you start to get to this higher end market, with the more luxurious, or not even luxurious, but even just like high end weddings, people want somebody to take ownership. People want to see somebody as the artist instead of working under an ambiguous name. People want to build trust with a figure. And I really saw the wisdom in that, but I was really nervous about using
mhm.
my name. Again, I guess that was really more about my fears than anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I think I was very kind, and I was very lucky to be able to ask Kirk Mastin from Mastin Labs, who was just a wonderful guy. And I gave him a few options, as to my names, business names, and what does he think? Because I was entertaining Katie's idea,
Mhm.
and Kirk said to
Not
me,
fully bought in yet.
right, yeah, I was maybe about like 70 to 80% kind of in there,
Yeah.
not 100%. But then Kirk sold it to me when he said Abul, just Abul.
Mhm,
And he said, it's the shortest. It,
mhm,
it sounds bold. It sounds confident. And not just that, but it asks the most of you. When you think to
mhm.
yourself,
Oh, wow,
you know,
yeah.
when he said that, like I got goosebumps again. When
Mhm,
he said
yeah.
that, I thought to myself, oh, I like that. Because
Yes.
as someone who's very big on personal growth, working under just my name, just Abel, I thought to myself, yeah, that would get the best out of me.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that's what I did. I looked around for domains. I found Abel.co. Abel.com was like 70,000 US dollars. So
Not that one.
yeah, yeah, not that one. So then I went to
How much if we
Abel.co,
take off the M?
right? Yeah, funny story. I did find Abel.co.uk,
Mhm.
and it was available, and I reached out to this internet website auctioneer, or like a website buyer,
Yeah.
um, to show interest in that domain
Mhm,
instead of buying it directly. And a valuable lesson for anybody listening:
mhm.
um, loose lips sink ships.
Totally.
Right? Right. So when I reached out to this guy and told him of my interest to buy this website, which is only like 1,500 British pounds,
Yeah.
2 days later, um, the website is no longer available unless it's for like £20,000.
Brutal.
Yeah, savage.
Enterprising.
Enterprise.
Enterprising.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I used a few expletives that day. Yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
Abel.co is great, and I love the
It is
domain. And,
great.
it's kind of ambiguous as to where I am in the world as well. So,
Mhm. Because your
um,
destination.
yeah, I am indeed. I am
Yes.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um,
I love that you brought up your name. If we could talk about that for a minute, because I
mm,
think this has been a kind of it's a lifelong interest of mine,
mm,
how the name that we are given,
mm,
we spend our lifetime
mm,
measuring ourselves against that name. And
mm,
it's part of, it becomes obviously a part of our identity, but it is much deeper, I
mm,
believe, than just our name.
mm,
Because there, as you said, there's so many perceptions and
mm,
biases about certain names. Even think of the
mm.
name Karen. Like, what does that now mean to all
Right.
the Karens out
Yeah.
there? As an
Karen.
example.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
certainly any name that doesn't sound like a rich white person's name, there's going to
Mm,
be like all sorts of, there's perceptions about names, period.
mm,
Um, my grandma's name was Barbara, so Barbara.
mm, Nice.
And she married a Barbara Rich. So
No
her name
way.
was Barbarich. My
Wow.
dad desperately wanted to call me Barbara.
Mm.
And this is the kindest thing my mom has ever done for me. She's like, no, we're, we're not doing that to her. Her name can be Bobby,
Uh,
but not Barbara.
she opened the door of mercy for you that time.
She was merciful that day. But my last name was
Mm.
barbaric, right? If you
Mm.
take off the H, like my dad's family's from Croatia, so
Mm.
we only have an H on it because that's what they gave to my grandpa when he
Mm.
landed in New York. And I was a large kid who
Mm.
was exceptionally strong
Mm.
and was not afraid to stand up for herself.
Mm.
So I became barbaric. I became my name,
See.
right?
Mm.
And I
Mm.
hated my name. I
Really,
did.
right.
I because
Mm.
it had all of these. I wasn't graceful, I wasn't thin, I wasn't elegant, I wasn't any of the things that women are supposed to be
Mm.
at that time, right? I mean, it's
Mm.
improving, the diversity is improving, but certainly, and that's, I mean, I referred to my eating disorder earlier, that certainly had a big
Mm.
piece in it. And then I found you had asked me if I'd ever given 100% in my life. And I did at one point, and this is a good reminder. Our conversation is a beautiful reminder for me to pursue that again.
Mm.
Um, I'd starting like in my mid-teens, I really got into endurance activities,
Okay.
screaming eating disorder, but I mean a socially acceptable way
Mm.
was by running for hours and hours and hours a day. And people were like, "Oh, look at you! You've lost, 70 pounds. Like you're doing awesome." So I got all this like positive affirmation that what I was doing was
Mm.
correct.
Mm.
Um, and so I did that for I until for about 10 years.
Mm.
And then I had been in a couple of, so I'd run marathons for a long time and then I got an injury and then I switched to biking, like road bike racing. And then I
Mm.
got a really bad injury. And so I
Mm.
was contemplating, should I continue?
Mm.
And I was in a period of my training program where you sit on a bike for 4 hours every morning and you
Mm.
maintain your heart rate at like 152 beats per minute. Like it was
Wow.
so obsessive.
Right.
And I would just put in my headphones, stare at the TV screen, and do the work, right?
Wow. Mm.
And on the TV screen came a woman dressed in like a jester costume, and she was wearing roller skates. And it
Okay.
just like it was like 5:30 in the morning, and it was 40 below in northern Alberta, Canada. And it just kind of blew my mind. Like the
Mm.
house is creaking because it's so cold, and I can hear nothing but the whir of my bike and like some music in my headphones. And then she just shattered all of that, like this reverie I was in.
Right.
I had to know who this person was. And it turns out she was starting a roller derby league like 10 blocks from my house. And I was like, I'm done. I just got off my bike and
Wow.
stopped training.
Yeah.
I started playing roller derby
Just like that.
like that. Like that was like, I mean, if I look
Uh,
back, there's probably little bits that were showing me like, okay, yeah, you've had 3 concussions, like you've had like all of that, you have this eating disorder, and the sport is just like allowing you to continue doing it. Like
right.
you're not owning your body because you're like trying to make yourself tiny and you're not. Like there's all these messages. And so when I saw
Mm.
her absolutely owning her shit, I was like, I could maybe learn something from this woman. But I showed up there, and it's a sport that 100% celebrates any shape that you are. It
Mm.
encourages healthy aggression, like, and it's such diverse people who play it that it just totally blew my mind. I was living in a monoculture for my whole life. And the first thing you do though when you play derby is that you pick a name. Sorry, it's a long story to get back to name.
Okay.
When you play roller derby, you pick a name
Uh-huh.
because it's a female sport, and God forbid, should we like own our athleticism and just be who we are, we have
Mm.
to put on this layer of entertainment.
Mm.
And so you choose a name, you choose a skate name, and you skate under a different name so that you can be like, have like this alternate
It's alter ego kind
personality.
of, right.
Yeah,
It's
and that didn't
persona.
sit right with me. I didn't
Mm.
like it.
Mm.
For the first time in my life, I was like, I have an opportunity to be someone else, but I don't really want to. Like, I don't like this idea because
Right.
it's hiding. It's
Yeah.
hiding who we are. And this sport is all about
Authentically you. Mm.
being who you are. Like the sport screams, this is who I am. So I chose a name, I didn't love it. And then when I started playing national roller derby and I went to World Cup,
Wow.
like, I'm gonna use my name. Like my name is barbaric. I'm in a sport where I can truly be myself,
Wow.
including my name. And
Wow.
so I switched it back to my name, and I went through the similar process with my photography as well.
Mm.
Like Barbara's just too hard to say, and it sounds like I'm like uncivilized and like
Mm.
so I had a different studio name, and then same thing. I was like, no, I have to be who I am. Like this
Mm.
is who I am. I'm going to be at your wedding. I'm going to be a little bit sweaty and ungraceful, and that's my last name is Barbaric. But like, you have to own who you are, and it becomes what people recognize about you, right? It
Mm.
becomes if you can celebrate who you are, other people will do that for you, with you,
Absolutely.
and it
Yeah.
drives away the people who don't belong with you.
Yeah. Absolutely. First, I love that story, and I love.
Sorry, it was a bit long.
No, no, no. I love the story. It actually reminds me that, you know, I'm deeply spiritual, and I love studying religions, like all faiths. But
Hmm.
in the Islamic faith, as a Muslim, there are very few times that a child has a right over the parent, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
One of those very few times in life when the child or the infant has a right over the parent is the right to have a good name.
No way.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
because spiritually we understand the importance and the significance of a name and how it can influence, the energy and the person and the character of someone as they grow up. Absolutely.
Oh,
Like for
wow.
me
That
growing
is,
up, it's fascinating, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very cool.
So that's one of the responsibilities that is owned by a parent to the child, and I
Mhm.
love that. So when I see on the internet like ridiculous names, like these kind of jovial, kind of double barrel, kind of funny names that
Mhm.
we know kids are going to get mocked for, it just kind of breaks my heart because
Yeah.
that's going to influence them and affect them, right, as they grow
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Self-fulfilling prophecy, like all like
Right.
there's so much importance. And that's so beautiful that they let you you get to pick your name.
Because I mean, as a child, as a child, we're just searching for identity. Even as adults, we're
Yeah,
just
totally.
still trying to find our authentic self and trying to, chip away, from the rock on the outside to try and find a more refined version of ourselves. And
Yeah.
that's what life is, a journey to find oneself. That's what mine has been anyway.
Hmm.
Uh, Growing up, I didn't really understand my name. Like I knew like Ab, Ab in Arabic means father.
Hmm.
And like that's kind of all I thought of it as is just Ab means father. That's all it was.
Hmm.
But as I got later in life and as I reached 30 and I started like researching like Islamic history
Hmm.
and the beauty of it and the tragedies of it,
Hmm.
um I learned to find out that I was named after this magnificent character in Islamic history who
Hmm.
was not just like a warrior, but he was like a poet, um
Hmm.
who would just yeah, and a philosopher and like an artist. It was just an incredible character that when I realized that my name is a reference and homage to
Yeah.
this individual
Yeah.
was just inspiring to me. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it only
Because you
clicked.
are that.
Mm,
You are
mm,
that. You are a poet. You are
mm.
you are so creative and artistic, and
Oh,
it makes perfect sense that you would be named that.
thank you. Thank you.
Kudos to your
I felt,
mama.
oh, thank
Or
you.
did or
Thank you
did
so
you
much.
pick Abel? Or
No,
did
no. So
or did
when I mean, the rights of the child over the parent, it's not that the child picks, it's that the parent has a noble responsibility to pick a
Oh, okay.
name
I see. I
that's
see.
that is going to be deserving you
Oh,
know
okay.
of the child, right? Yeah, no, a child's too young to pick a name. Yeah,
No, I wondered if there was like
yeah.
a ceremonial part like in their teens or something where you get to like
Oh,
name yourself or something.
yeah, no. um where was I with that? So I was speaking about, yeah, about my name,
Talking
and
about
then,
who you were named after, yeah.
yeah, and now just moving forward back to you finding your more authentic self in that
Hmm.
roller derby, you're going back to your name barbaric and just connecting back to the authenticity.
Hmm.
Like, I love that. Like, that is a beautiful story of self-discovery right there, and connecting with yourself and just being proud of yourself. And one thing I've learned over the last 3 years is that the more authentic and sincere I'm being in my message and with people and with clients, then the deeper the connection we create with the people we're communicating with. Because, I mean, let's be honest, when we're speaking to somebody, you can kind of feel how sincere they're being, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like if a salesman comes up to you and they're trying to sell to you, you're being sold to,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But Barbara, do you remember times in your life when you've met somebody and they stand out as someone unique to you and as someone who has um, a sincere, authentic, and genuine personality that you trust from the very first moment you meet them? Have you ever
Hmm.
experienced that before?
From the very first moment that I met them,
Mm.
yeah, I
Like you
can
just
think
get this
of,
feeling.
yes, but it only started happening when I
Mm.
started presenting myself that way first.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it happens
Mm,
for me lots
mm,
because I I spent so long not being authentic. Time is running out. Like I, I only want that. I only want
right.
to be authentic with people. So I would say the vast majority of people that I now spend the most of my time with is people like that. Like, and even, you go to a public place like a conference or something, and you meet someone, you just like like you click. It's like steel doors coming together, and like
Mm,
this is
right.
something that I can immediately talk with and share with and like be vulnerable with and
Mm,
be exactly bring my gifts to the table, and they're there to receive them.
mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
What
love that.
and
Mm.
you? What about you?
Yeah. No, I definitely. You just had me thinking. I'll come back to that. I'm not avoiding the question, but just hearing about how you started to pick up on the sincerity in front of you, in the personality in front of you, only once you have become sincere yourself.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a direct correlation that, as you're walking through life, putting in this misty bubble around you so people see you a particular way, that once you get rid of that,
Yeah.
that it becomes a two-way, like the vision's clearer both ways instead of just one direction?
Absolutely.
Do you feel there's a correlation with that?
100% for sure.
Mm,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's also a lot easier.
Yes. Yes. No, I was literally going to come to the same conclusion myself, that I really feel that when I had this opportunity to work under my name, Abul, when I started working on the website, I I decided right there that I'm going to do all the things I don't want to use the word ashamed, but that I was shying away from, because I was trying to um, appeal to the widest audience possible.
Right.
Because I realized that by me using a name like Gracious Photography and steering away from my name, all I'm really doing is just truly serving people that I'm never really going to serve myself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to appeal to people who are never going to book me,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
So once I started to be more my authentic self and work under my name, I saw the opportunity to put more authenticity into my business. So on my about page, I mean, my website's not completely finished yet, and it's still pretty brand new, which is why it's not ranking pretty well just yet, but it'll get there.
It sure
But
will.
thank you. But I had the opportunity to do this for the first time in my life as someone who's very introverted,
Mm-hmm.
just allow the opportunity to be vulnerable and hopefully create this deeper connection with people who see my about page. Like on my about page now, I've got a photo of me on my bed with like Michael Jackson wallpaper, and I have like this, 9 things about me, and I kind of have this, a few questions and answers about, like my favorite school band was Pearl Jam,
Mm-hmm.
and the amount of people that have contacted me to say, oh, we love this too, or
Yeah.
I can't believe that, you used to work as a Samaritan too, or as a counselor, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Just the amount of good that's come from me being more vulnerable and authentic has done nothing short but create deeper connections with the people who now book me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm now booking clients that, you know, I feel like I'm friends with for life now. And I feel so
Mm-hmm.
grateful for that. So for me, authenticity, um, and being more vulnerable and learning to be vulnerable and learning to share more. Um, I'm still working on that, but I'm just enjoying now, just playing with that and sharing that and seeing the responses I get from my clients that are booking me right now.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are these perceptions that at some level
Mm,
we shouldn't be sharing who we are,
mm,
like deeply and truly, especially when you get up into the upper echelons of uh price, really.
right.
That somehow you're not allowed to do that anymore. Um, and you're proving that no, that's not the case. Like people, no matter where you're at, if you,
Mm,
connection is one of the most basic human needs that we
mm,
have, and
mm,
love being another one. And we're putting those together in our work, right? How can you
mm,
not? How can you not share that? It has to be shared.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'd like to think that when someone's being vulnerable and sincere, that I can pretty much pick up on it. Maybe 8 or 9 times out of 10. I'd like
Mhm.
to say 10, but that would be my ego speaking, really. See, I'm calling it out there, right? Um, but just to come back to your point, Bobby, that I really, I really have witnessed how me starting out trying to um, stay afloat as a photographer and be able to wave a flag and say, "Hey, I'm a wedding photographer," and establish myself in an industry. You
Mhm.
know, when I first started out as a wedding photographer, I was so desperate and hungry to be accepted within the community and seen as a photographer,
Right.
right? But now, fast forward like, 8 years later, I'm trying hard to differentiate myself away from everybody else and
Ah,
stand out away from everybody else. Um,
yeah.
and it's funny because I'm no longer, paying attention to the photographers around me or, my competitors. My biggest competitor now in life is myself.
Hmm.
And the only people I'm really trying to appeal to are the people I want to book me.
Yes.
So um, it's so liberating,
Yeah, I was going to say there's so much freedom in that.
right?
Yeah.
So the more authenticity I put into my work, the more
Hmm.
vulnerable I can be, and put more vulnerability into my work, into my message, and even my images.
Hmm.
I I feel like I'm just freeing myself and just adding to, the person I truly am, but sharing that with the world.
Yeah.
And whoever sees that and appreciates that and wants to commission me for work based on that, they're getting the best of me because I'm being nothing but myself.
Right. Yes. Amen.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I think we are, we come here
Mm.
with some gifts.
Mm.
Our life experiences help us to develop them
Mm.
into strengths and skills. And then in the latter part of our life, the purpose is to give them away so that others can grow and share and benefit
Mm.
from what we've from our presence and our reason for being here
Mm. Absolutely.
and
So
being,
passing on what we know, is that what you're saying?
yeah, more even more than what we know, like passing along who we are.
Mm. Oh, I love that, Bobby.
Yeah.
Passing on who we are.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do you feel as if you're vulnerable? Do you feel as if you're vulnerable enough in your message for your business? And do you feel like you um, have the opportunity to be your authentic self when it comes to your business and your work?
It's so interesting that you asked me this question
Mm.
because the last like 2 or 3 years have been really rapid growth.
Mm.
And the thing with the wedding industry is that people book you a year ahead.
Mm.
So this year,
Mm.
I feel like my clients, it's like I'm looking at reflections of myself a year ago.
Mm. Right, right.
And I'm like, oh, wow, yes, that's where I was at. That's where
Mm.
I was at. And now I feel like I'm in a much different headspace and I have much different, uh, more evolved like aspirations because
Right,
this is like it's all building on each other, right? And so
right.
I've just learned to appreciate that this year. I've come away from
Mm.
a few weddings being like, oh, that felt like I remember thinking that that was going to be so in line, and then realizing like, oh yeah, that's why this is happening is because one, it's kind of affirmation that yes, I am growing, I'm always growing, but two, to uh to dig even deeper into the future that I want and the while being really grateful for where everything is right now because it's learning and affirmation and reminding and further skills and strengths for what's coming next year. So
Mm.
I've been doing this for so long, but it's really only been in like the last 3 or 4 years where I'm seeing this kind of pattern
Mm.
of maybe I wasn't being as authentic as I thought. Like where yeah, definitely. Like last year, the year before, I was feeling a lot of fear in terms
Mm.
of really showing who I was. And
Mm.
I had a few clients who were, oftentimes I feel like my clients will show me who I am and who I want to work with. Like they pick me out, even though I don't believe that I'm good enough or whatever. Like I can't be
Right.
what they want.
Mm.
But now it's kind of flipping. I'm like, okay, I need to dig in and be even more clear. And I do find myself falling into safe patterns sometimes. So I'm not out of it yet, for sure.
I completely understand that. I do. And you really touched on this really this really kind of interesting point that I completely recognize that we are constantly evolving,
Hmm.
especially as creatives, because as creatives, we would like to hopefully consider ourselves as like sensitive and be liberal enough to express ourselves in any number of ways freely and courageously, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and that really brings me back to this quote that I heard by I think it was Henri Matisse who says, "Creativity takes courage,"
Yeah.
and by that I really like I could easily substitute that word for vulnerability
Yeah. Yeah.
because when I'm going to use this analogy, that we could play it safe, right? Like if we think about of our business as this vessel, you know, our job as creatives, as artists, is not to stay at the dock and stay harbored and you know stay at port. Like our job is to go out to the water and to experience and to try things and express ourselves in ways that a creative should be able to do, as an artist should be able to do, and and to grow with that. So I love that you recognize you're different now than you was a year ago.
Hmm.
I know I'm different now than I was 6 months ago, and we will constantly be evolving and hopefully always for the better.
Hmm.
Um, but if creativity takes courage, then I pray that we always continue to be vulnerable and to keep growing in the right direction, and to not look sideways what other people are doing in the industry, but just look forward to what moves us, what inspires us, and just focus our best effort and energy into that. Because if we can attract people by doing what we truly love, then, we'll be doing more of the same more often.
Yes, I totally agree. And adding to that point, not
Mm.
confusing inspiration with comparison.
Right.
Because we look at other people's work, we think we're being inspired, but we're really comparing ourselves on some levels, right? Um, One of the ways that I do that is I don't really like, I certainly follow other photographers' uh, accounts to support them,
Mm.
but I don't look at them for inspiration.
I love
Yes.
that. I,
Yeah.
I love that. I've done exactly the same thing. So I think about no, maybe 3 years ago, I went through my Instagram and I just culled a lot of the photographers that I followed early on in my career,
Mhm.
because I don't want to look at other photographers' work now. I
Yep.
don't want to be influenced by other photographers. So I've unfollowed so many photographers that the ones I follow now, I largely support because I know I've met, or maybe they do inspire me. But I love that you do that too. I think that's
Mhm.
so important that we don't get distracted by like trends that are happening now, or you know these you know these little waves of influences that happen, but just to stay steady and consistent. What really moves us, like, and I mean like truly deeply moves us.
Yeah. And to find that, to find what really truly moves us, we need to create white space in our lives to be able to
Mm,
open up that ability to see and hear and be
mm,
influenced by something that's not photography to influence us as photographers,
mm,
right?
mm,
Um, yeah, we could, especially being solo entrepreneurs, most of us are solo, right? We have a
mm,
business and we have to do all of the things, and
mm.
white space gets deleted pretty easily, right?
So I'd love to know, Bobby, because I love seeing your stories pop up, how you're on these adventures and going on these wonderful walks in the most incredible places with your dog as well, who I hope is
Yeah.
better now after the tick bite, because I saw.
Yes, yes, he's
Yeah,
doing fine. He's recovered.
good. But I'd love to know, what does your white space look like? What does your place of reflection, or your zone of decompression, or whatever you may call it, like what does that look like for Bobby?
Mm. Um, being okay, so I spend a lot of time in the mountains and in forests. So every morning, at least an hour, and I'm very lucky where I live. I live 3 blocks from mountain trails.
Wow.
But I chose to live here. I grew up in a really remote, flat area in northern Alberta, and it's the exact opposite of where I live now. Um, so that creating that space for myself in the morning um, sets the tone for what my day is going to be like. If I don't do
Mm,
that, I notice myself much more easily irritated. Time passes so fast because
mm,
everything is based on a to-do list. Whereas if I give myself an hour or two in the morning of just like free thinking, moving my body, getting joy from my dogs, like that connection with animals, they're so
mm,
free.
mm,
Um, my day is just open and I feel so centered. Um,
mm,
yeah, and then the other piece is like I run ultra marathons in the mountains, so it's kind of the extreme version of of my
wow.
morning routine. But the reason I do that is because it it's that feeling of 100% that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
When you give 100% to something, you
Mm.
discover portals of your consciousness and your brain that you would never otherwise experience, right?
Oh, love that.
Yeah, so if you are doing something 100% and there's no way out, like kind of burning the boat thing, like I've
Mm.
got to run for 8 hours to get to this point, otherwise this never
Yeah.
ends. But your brain is like, oh, okay. And it's like it's almost like you take shackles off your head
Mm.
and you just like you can smell beautiful like alpine smells and like you can hear birds you've never heard before.
Mm.
And it's just you come back to your desk or you go back to work the next day and you're just everything is more clear. It just makes more sense.
Love
Communing
that.
with nature, whatever that is, whether you're gardening or yeah, walking like I think it's so incredibly important that we spend time outside or we have some sort of space where we're just thinking about joy or pursuing the feelings that we want to feel.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
You know?
You know, yeah, I love that, and I love that you live so close to these woodlands and forests and the hills. That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
Um, I know that psychologists. I don't think it's recent studies though, but I know a few years ago I heard that psychologists have said that color therapy is a real thing. You know, if you're working in an office environment, going out for a walk for 10 minutes somewhere green, just for 10 minutes, can have such an incredible effect and reduction in your anxiety, in blood pressure, and so much more. Like I love that you really have started to understand yourself and you know have such a great way of spending time in that white space that you described.
Hmm. What about for you?
Mm,
What's your white space?
good question. Um, so I'm really pursuing um, I'm really on this pursuit of creativity and I'm really working hard on my compositions and constantly, you know, studying like, you know, street photographers' work and some of the old masters like Enrique Bresson and,
Hmm.
you know, uh, Robert Frank and, you know, lots of
Elliot
incredible
Irwin.
photographers.
Yeah.
Yeah, Elliot Erwitt, right? Um, so I like to take myself on artist dates,
Hmm.
which so if I do something, if I treat myself to something, I'm always trying to let it be creative related because that is what recharges me right now. And that's kind of my happy place. Um, so it could be an exhibition, it can be a gallery, it could be it could be a walk in nature as well. It can be going to the cinema. And by the cinema, some people might think, well, you're just going to watch a movie, right?
Hmm.
But I look at watching a movie as the opportunity to allow someone else to tell you a story in the vision that they've chosen, you know.
Hmm.
And I love just, you know, being immersed in someone else's mind and, you know,
Yeah.
seeing how they want to present a story and the kind of lens choices they use and how they're
Yeah.
framing something and the cinematography.
Hmm.
Um, music as well is something that's always been very important to me.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I don't think it's just one thing for me. Um, laying on grass is another
Mm.
sensory thing for me because I'm very sensory myself. Um, sitting on the grass, bare feet on the grass, and just laying there is is just one of my favorite things to do, and I will fall asleep for at least a couple of minutes every time I do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah, but if I'm trying to like recharge myself or to relax, right now I'm just really enjoying the benefits of like my artist states with myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you read Julia Cameron's book?
I have. Yeah. In fact, it's always right there on the desk, right there
Yeah.
next to me.
The Artist's
Yeah.
Way. Yeah,
The artist way. That's right.
it's such a good book, and especially in terms of figuring out that getting the shit out of your head, right? That's so much.
Mm,
You have to develop this practice, and then eventually, the good stuff comes because now there's no more like it's almost like meditating, right?
right.
like all the fuzz
The more
kind
static in the head, right? It's just all out on paper.
of clear. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. That book for me is very special, and I think it's always going to have a very special place in my heart. The Artist's Way,
Hmm.
and I remember the first time I read that, I was just so captivated by, especially by what was the term she used? Um, I can't remember. There were so many incredible points in the book, but when she was describing how, you know, you you're always drawn to artists in your life, but you never really pursue the path. And I recognized so much of my early self reading this book,
Hmm.
spending spending my time with people who are very creative and watching them draw, but now I actually get to fulfill my goal of being a photographer. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so that book's very special to me.
Yes. You know, about you speak of your art with like such love and reverence. It's really unique. You don't see um I don't see this super often. Like you it's almost um like this caring sort of, I don't want to say like, what word? Almost like a parenting kind of
Mm,
like fascination and yeah, reverence for what you're creating. It is very inspiring. So thank you
oh,
for sharing that.
thank you so much. That's I've never heard it worded like that before, but that's really sweet. I Photography for me is almost like a practice of gratitude.
Mhm.
I I acknowledge without a shadow of a doubt that photography has really shaped me in such beautiful ways that I don't think I could have got there without the camera in my hand. You
Mm,
know, it's really forced me to slow down, to take on board things, to look at light, to look at textures, you know, to think to myself of how I want other people to feel,
mhm,
how I'm feeling, what's moving me, how can I move other people. It's really transcended, you know, my small little humble world into this beautiful, big, fluffy world, an opportunity to connect with other people.
mhm.
In fact, I'll share a little more than that. I know this sounds very cheesy and cliche, but when I'm photographing couples, one of my secrets when I'm photographing them is I always try to look at my couples through um, through familiar eyes, as if like they're my loved ones, or as if they're my dearest friends or my oldest friends. And I find that every time I'm photographing a wedding and I'm looking at them and I've accepted and I've told myself the story and I've accepted that I love these two people and
Yeah.
I'm going to go out of my way to show how much I love them.
Mhm,
I know that the body work I come out with my wedding is far different than me going in as a job, just trying to tick these boxes, ceremony, reception, couple photos, and then go home. I know that I come back far more fulfilled.
mhm,
And I know that when I deliver these images, I know deep down that although some of my clients may not be able to communicate this, that I know that they feel it in some way when they look at some of the images.
mhm, mhm. I have no doubt.
Mm,
That's your
yeah. So,
gift.
oh, thank you. I don't think I don't know if I call it my gift. I think I've worked really hard at this. I'm a big believer that hard work beats talent when talent hardly works. So I
Okay.
don't see myself as talented. I just see myself as hardworking.
Yeah,
And
that's not how I mean gift.
oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean gift in terms of it's the reason why we're here.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so you're given this gift
Mm,
in your little body
mm,
and your life forms it
mm,
and then you start giving it away.
mm,
Yeah, like it is forged in challenging experiences and traumas and tribulations and like forged in fire. But here it is. Now you're at a place where you're authentic and you've done this personal growth and you are feeling the gratitude for all of these experiences. And
Mm.
now you get to give it away.
Oh, I love that, Bobby. I'm going to keep that.
You're welcome. That's my gift to you.
I'm humbled. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Listen, I could talk to you forever.
Right
but,
back at you. This has been so nice.
but yeah, I'm really grateful that you've been here. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. This has been a real honor. I've always looked at you as someone who is really connected with themselves, who never sacrifices, their happiness for anything else, and I'm just grateful that you're passing on this incredible energy to the people that listen to your podcast. And I don't know what it is that's ahead on your path for you, Bobby, but I know whatever it is, it's going to be pretty special, and I'm all for it.
Thank you. I think you're right.
Oh, I'm not often right, but about this, I have a good hunch.
Amazing. All right. Have a
Thank you so much,
very
Bobby.
beautiful day.
Thank you, my lovely. You too. You
Take
stay
care.
amazing, stay blessed, and speak to you soon.
You too. Bye.
Bye bye.
Well, how is that for a human being? He's such a lovely person. I'm so grateful that he was here. Um, I'm not sure there's anything else that I have to say other than if he has inspired you, if Abul has inspired you and you want to learn more about him or you want to learn from him, we didn't talk about this during the podcast, but he actually has a Patreon account and you can check him out there and support him in that way. And it's at patreon.com/ABULS. And I'm going to link to that in the show notes. He speaks about his inspiration, his composition breakdown. He talks about gear. He shares his behind the scenes. If you want to learn from him, this is a really easy and beautiful way to do it. Otherwise, I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. And as always, thank you for being here. Thank you for leaving a review. And I hope you have a most beautiful and inspiring day.